Well, Marcel and I have been co-chairing the nominating committee. And as you know, those of you who were at the December 13th annual meeting, the meeting was not concluded because in order to do so, we have to inform the membership and put out for a vote the new proposed slate that for leaders that will start their duties on July 1st of this year. So
So under the bylaws, the way the process works is that the nominating committee is chaired by the immediate past president or the next president in line who is available to serve. So we work together because Marga's travel schedule was pretty onerous this fall. The way it works is the nominating committee puts together a slate, has to present it to the membership within a certain time period, and then during the annual meeting of the club, the slate is voted on. In the interim, if anyone has additional nominations, they are added to the list. This year, we announced it at the December 13th meeting, and we needed to give 30 days for people to add additional nominations. None were received. And so the way the procedure works is we present the slate, and then the members who are present at the next regular meeting, which is this meeting, vote on that slate. So Marga?
Yes. Well, before I announce the slate for this coming Rotary year, I would like to thank Betsy Meisenheimer, who may be on the Zoom call or perhaps not, but Betsy has served with great honor and joy on my part to have her as a board member when I was president. So I would like to continue to mention who are the names. As treasurer, we have Matthias Arnberg, who agreed to serve another year as treasurer of our club. Bob Harney is going to be our secretary of the board and director as well. And we have second term directors, Nita Nagubadi, and Ted Nebel, who have volunteered to offer a second term, just said that. And our new incoming directors are going to be Sean Stringer for Shada Calderwood and Rolandas Statulevicius. So I would like to thank them very much and thank you, Marshall. But the last, perhaps if you don't know already, the incoming president or our president nominee she's already blushing. And it's going to be Laura In. So thank you, Laura, so much for agreeing. She's still blushing. Agreed to serve on this club. And as you know, we've worked together in the board and she's phenomenal. So I'm looking forward to working with you when you're president of the club. Anything else?
Well, I'd like to just then call for a vote, given that we have not had any other nominations. I'm going to just call for those all in favor of the slate as presented on the screen here. Just say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. So thank you very much, everyone. And let me just add one thing, which is I've now been involved in this process for a couple years, and it's extremely important to the viability of the club that we continue to have a pipeline of very talented individuals who want to serve the club. And I want to thank those who have served in the past and the new nominees. It's a very important thing that has kept this club going since 1905, that we have people who are willing to serve. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Tima, very much.
Thank you for the work and effort that went into this process.
And with this, formally, I declare the conclusion of the annual meeting. So
thank you. Thank you, Margo. Well, that means we're going to be moving to our speaker in a second. And Alida, if you wouldn't mind joining me up here to introduce him properly. We have a tradition of trying our best to introduce our speakers. So Alida is more eloquent than I am. Please do him the honors. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Robert Blackwell Jr. is the chairman of the board of EKI-Digital, a leading digital transformation consultancy firm. The technology company finds financial modernization opportunities by using quantitative models, mathematical, economic, and statistical. This model has helped large public and private sector organizations identify and capture billions in savings. As a passionate writer, Mr. Blackwell has crafted several papers and presentations related to digital modernization, innovation, and efficiency in the public and private sectors. His his strategic advice has guided governments and business leaders on ways to better leverage IT investments to improve revenue and service quality while reducing costs and risks from digital portfolios. Robert has also makes a point to get involved and give back. He is on several boards, including Illinois Tech School of Computing, US Bank, Business Leadership Council, and Chicagoland Chamber of Commerce. Mr. Blackwell has helped a number of young entrepreneurs start businesses and enjoys reading and writing about math, economics, and history. And I wish I knew you when I was taking Econ 101. But welcome, Mr. Blackwell.
Well, thank you guys very much. I'm happy to be here, and I have to talk to somebody about whoever wrote that long, boring introduction. So I'm gonna, first of all, I thought I'd just kind of give you a very quick overview of my background. I kind of describe myself in two ways. One is an unemployable math misfit. So I went to school, studied math. I worked at IBM for a little while in my very early 20s, where they didn't quite know what to do with me. So they said, go make us some money or something. So I wrote all the algorithms that would give salespeople signals to upgrade machines. And then I was a quantitative trader for a long time. Ended up funding a company I had to take over, and I turned that to a company that wrote financial modeling systems for really large organizations. So today I run a company called EKI-Digital. Is where we really use the math of the trading world to find efficiencies for large organizations. I'm a table tennis company called Killer Spin, and we started a new company called Quant16. Quant16 uses advanced algorithms to find efficiency in vendor spin, but also it helps companies find the Black and Hispanic companies that they can do business with. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Alpha Mission today. So back in the after the whole George Floyd incident happened, I wrote a series of articles called Love is a Verb. The theme of that was that nobody can protect or feed their family based on your sympathy. So if you want to help somebody, go buy something from somebody. So next. Okay. So if you're looking at in American history, I think we've had three great American movements. They tend to happen once a century. The first was the founding of the Republic. The second was the abolition of slavery. And what most people don't realize, there was actually a Black businessman in the late 1700s named James Forten. He was one of the wealthiest people in Philadelphia in the late 1700s. He was actually one of the primary funders of the abolitionist movement. The 20th century was all about what I call the one set of rules movement, which is the civil rights movement. Now, in 1895, which I'll talk to you about Booker T. Washington and Julius Rosenwald, who were the people on the front portion, on the first page. So what I believe now is that we need what I call the fourth great American movement, which is a movement of people of goodwill dedicated to proving that the free enterprise system works for everybody. Because there's no comparison on taking people from poverty to prosperity. And I think that's why we have a lot of the ills we have today. So I think we do need this, again, movement of people of goodwill dedicated to proving that this system of free enterprise works for everybody. Next. So I think everybody would know about some of the challenges we have in Chicago, specifically around crime. And I'll just give you some quick statistics. There's about according to the police department, there's about 117,000 gang members in Chicago. There's about about 800,000 blacks in Chicago. If you divide that in half, take the males, there's just a little under 400,000. If you take out the people under 11 and over 30, what that would tell you is the great majority of black boys are involved in gangs. So the question is, why is that? Is it just something that's natural? I don't think so. I think it is absolutely has to do with the lack of economic participation in our country by the black community. So Chicago has a significant and rich, a significant black community with a rich history that's never really recovered from the loss of industry. The complication is Chicago lacks a black entrepreneurial participation ecosystem. I'm sure you guys have heard of all this diversity, equity, and inclusion and ESG and stuff like that. Unfortunately, I think it's a bunch of corporate virtue signaling because mostly black entrepreneurs get lots of lectures and no money. And there's consequences for that. So the solution, in my view, is for people both in the public sector and private sector to just do business. And I'll explain something called the Lead Partner Program. Next. So this is a study I did based on the 2010 census. So if you took all the businesses with employees by ethnicity, majority-owned companies would have been 9.4 trillion, women $1 trillion, Asians 455 billion, Hispanics 276 billion, and blacks 98 billion. Even though blacks have double the educational achievement on average as Hispanics. But even that's not a real number. If you look at the revenue to employee ratio of the largest black businesses, you would see that revenue to employee ratio is greater than Microsoft and Facebook or Meta, whatever they call it now, and Google. So that means you're either going to create a lot of wealth or it's mostly pass through. It's mostly pass through so that companies and governments can get credit for doing business without losing any money. That means they're passing through a lot of low, no margin business. And there's consequences for that. The consequences of this are blacks are the only group in the United States that earned less in 2018 than they did in the year 2000. And black boys are the least likely to escape poverty. So there is some correlation there with their participation in this illegal activity. So 70% of middle-class black children will likely fall out of the middle class by the time they're adults. So if you see this correlation here, there's almost an exact correlation in involvement in crime. Next. Okay, so if you ask yourself the question, where in the world are poor people healthy, educated, and safe? And conversely, where in the world are affluent people, regardless of their race, not healthy, educated, and safe? The answer is nowhere. So the question is, how do you go from poverty to prosperity? I think there's only one way. It is entrepreneurial-led economic participation in the modern parts of the economy that create wealth that leads to the appreciation of education and social capital. Social capital is when you reach back and you pull people from your community along, but more importantly, you create an aspirational roadmap for your young people so they know where to place their bets. Next. Okay, so I'm going to ask you guys this question here. Name two famous black entrepreneurs that would be nationally known with no connection to sports or any form of entertainment. So if you can name two, raise your hand. Who? Willie Wilson?
No. Oh my God, the mayor candidate.
You're talking about Willie Wilson?
Willie Wilson.
Okay. Willie Wilson, nobody outside Chicago knows who he is.
He was a president candidate.
Huh?
He ran for a president.
Okay, I will bet you my leg that if you go to Cleveland and if you ask somebody who Willie Wilson is, they'll think he's a basketball player. The answer is nobody knows Willie Wilson. Okay, name somebody else.
C.J. Walker?
Somebody alive.
Alive. Okay. Let's see. How much do they have to earn?
They would be a famous entrepreneur, not a CEO, but a famous entrepreneur. Okay, we're going to move on because in a decade and a half of me asking that question, not one person has ever been able to answer it. So why does that matter? because the market tells black kids, place your bets on sports and entertainment. And that's exactly what they do. So what will happen is in athletics, if you are not on the way, I'd say one of the stud athletes by the time you're 12, you essentially have no hope. In fact, you can see the statistics. Sports participation in kids dramatically drops off after the age of 12. So then if your only hope is entertainment, another form of entertainment, then what do? You place your bet on rap music. And if you ever go and you look at any videos of gang members in Chicago, what you'll see is they all want to be a rap artist, because that's where the market's telling them to place their bets. Okay, so what I believe is that we need fewer saviors and more business partners. The problem is black boys never see black men doing anything except entertaining people. So it is a part of how they develop themselves. And when they see entertainment, if you guys have ever seen the movie Goodfellas, and you remember Henry Hill says, I wanted to be in the mafia because those guys had the cars and the girls and the clothes, that dynamic plays everywhere. Okay, next. Okay, I think history shows that economic cooperation between the black and white business community always leads to progress in the country. In 1895, Booker T. Washington gave a famous speech at the Atlanta Exposition. The essence of that speech was, America's never going to be what it can be until blacks get included in the economy. He said, we don't need to live around you, but we do have to be a part of the economy. Otherwise, we'll be disproportionately involved in crime and other things. Julius Rosenwald, anybody know who Julius Rosenwald was? Julius Rosenwald, in my opinion, is the greatest American philanthropist in history. That's my perspective. He was a Chicagoan. I believe it was either him or his parents were Jewish immigrants. And they said, what's happening to blacks in this country is wrong. We should do something about it. What he did, he responded to Booker T. Washington's call to create a better country. He wasn't prescriptive. So they built 5,300 schools in the South, which was how blacks got educated. Remember, it was illegal to educate blacks where 90% of blacks were. So he and Booker T. Washington worked on that. They also created something called the Negro Business League, because he said the purpose of education is two things. One is to teach you how to be a good citizen, to build your character. And the other is to prepare you for the economic opportunities that are available to you. Out of that came what was called the Black Wall Streets, or the Freedom Colonies. And if you've ever heard of that, so imagine between 1910 and 1930 in the Jim Crow South, that was the height of black business participation in our country. The height of black education came between the 1940s and 1960s. Entrepreneurial participation always leads the appreciation of education. It's not the other way around. Next. In 1962, I don't know how many of you guys all look like you're too young to have been born alive during 1962. I was 2 years old. Well, actually, I was 1.5 when he gave this speech. President Kennedy gave a speech in September 1962, and he said, facing the challenge from the Soviet Union, he said, we choose to go to the moon in this decade, not because it's easy, but because it's hard, and it's a mission worthy of our best efforts. I think that is the last time our country has rallied around some big purpose. So I remember I was born in 1960. I remember in the 60s, everybody was really into the moon mission, regardless of where you were. That created the opportunity for the black female mathematicians featured in the movie Hidden Figures. And then Neil Armstrong said, I'm not getting into that rocket until Katherine Johnson specifically maps my way back home. Next. Okay. Black entrepreneurs create opportunity and aspiration, not just for the black community, but for the whole country. Chicago used to be the mecca of black business opportunity. When that was the case, Chicago was a much stronger city. Today, blacks are fleeing Chicago because they don't see hope. In 1973, the black business community and the white business community in Atlanta, they created something called the Atlanta Action Forum. They said, blacks are going to have political power, whites have economic power. We need to work together to create an Atlanta that works for everybody. And they did. And Atlanta is a very different city than it was in the early 70s. In fact, Atlanta at that time was kind of a sister city to Birmingham, Alabama. So the Delta hub, which is now Jackson Hartsfield Airport, one of the busiest in the world, Birmingham turned it down because they said, we don't want any race mixing. So Atlanta took it and they transformed the city. This last picture over here, I don't know if you recognize the guy in the front there, but that was at my house in 1996 when I had to pay people to come listen to Barack. So I would say before everybody else started to know who he was, it was a black business community that provided support for Barack. Next. So actually, after Barack was elected, I got invited to do a tour of India. And I met with somebody in the central bank, and they kind of gave me the story of India. He said in 1991, they figured out socialism doesn't work. They started to free their economy. Their government started doing business with their small entrepreneurs, which prepared them for the international market. And then US business just did business with capable Asian entrepreneurs. And in a period of 20 years, India and China took 750 million people out of poverty. That's double the population of the United States. It is because of the free enterprise system that half the world in a little more than 20 years came out of poverty. Unfortunately, during that same period, blacks in our country went deeper into poverty. Next. So there's an area of the city called North Kenwood, Oakland. I don't know if any of you guys have heard of this. It's just north of Hyde Park, where the University of Chicago is. So in 1995, I sold a company, said I'm gonna buy a house in a black neighborhood, because actually I grew up under segregation. I grew up in Wichita, Kansas. I only saw white people on television. So what I thought was this area, which was full of public housing, which between 35th and 47th Street on the lake, what I thought we needed was economic integration, not racial integration. My own view is you got to take care of yourself before you go ask somebody else to help you. So I bought a bunch of land, I built houses, I named them after famous African Americans, and that neighborhood is today what I envisioned it would be. It is an economically integrated black neighborhood, and things are better for everybody. So listen, I'm not that rich or that smart, but I think economics, like gravity, tends to work the same way for everybody. Next. Okay, so this is what I call I'm a part of a group called the Business Leadership Council. It is a black business group here in Chicago. So what we believe is that when Chicago becomes a black business capital of the world, it will not only be good for the black community, it'll be good for our city as a whole. So the vision is by December 2026, Chicago will be the leader in black business participation, creating a pathway for ending once and for all the generational poverty of Chicago's black citizens. And I think then we can actually set an example for the nation. So the outcomes would be $2 billion in direct black business, not subcontracting, but direct. We're in a $1 trillion economy. That's what Illinois is, a $1 trillion economy. There are not many countries that big. So we're trying to get $2 billion is 0.2%, and we're nowhere close to that. Despite all the diversity programs and all that kind of stuff, I think we have more diversity programs than flies in the city. That'll lead to a 50% drop in black crime, and we can create high-paying jobs that become an export industry for Chicago. Next. Okay, so what we did is we created something called the Lead Partner Program. What the Lead Partner Program says to businesses, just do business. Stop trying to save people, just do business with people who are ready to deliver value. So the responsibility of the CEO is essentially to have one or more significant relationships with a black company, and then just tell the people you work for, pick one and you're done. That's it. That's your whole program. Pick one and you're done. Number two, but be open to collaborative ideas from Black vendors that benefit your organization, and then ask other people to follow your lead. The responsibility of the Black company is to identify a clear value proposition, because if you can't do that, you can't be in business. Number two, in exchange for that opportunity, you have to take on the role of the mentor. So the Black companies, in my view, should be the prime and the subs, the mentors and the proteges. There is nothing wrong with whites trying to help Blacks, but it does reinforce their own inferiority complex. And then support community-based microfinance efforts. So we fund small Black IT companies. We fund something called Mowers and Blowers. It's money for cutting grass and moving snow. There's money there. And then we do something called the Housing for Tutoring Exchange, where we give honorable Black college students a place to live in exchange for mentoring and tutoring elementary and high school kids. Next. Okay, so this is just kind of how we recruit people. We're going to be establishing business and science clubs, and even something called the Barbershop Engagement Network. Next. Okay, so in conclusion, I think that there is no doubt that the free enterprise system is the way for us to solve the problems that we're dealing with. Charity, it's nice, but charity is really the crumbs of other people's success. There has not been an example in history where charity has led the transformation of any people out of poverty. I'd love to see an example of that. I don't think it exists. But the free enterprise system, which is based on voluntary cooperation of people of goodwill, absolutely has transformed lots of lives. And I think right now we got a binary choice. Young people are confusing socialism with social good. And I don't think they're the same thing. So we're either going to prove that this system of free enterprise works for all of us, or we have the opportunity to lose. We won't be the first country in history to lose the freedoms that we have. So thank you.
Well, Robert, thank you very much for this. Very, very, very interesting. This is a curious crowd, and they have questions. Oh, there's one right there. I knew it.
Hi, first of all, I want to say thank you for pointing out things I've said for years, that we can't get rid of crime by taking care of crime. We have to take care of the issues that cause the crime. And that's amazing. And just how can we be a part? As a small Black business owner, yes, I've had more conferences and free mentoring and free everything else versus finance that my small business needs. So how can we?
What kind of business are you?
I'm a caterer.
Okay.
I'm a full service off-premise caterer. That most people here have had my food and they love it. So as for what I do, I believe in helping people in my community. And so I'm giving back by training other people who are trying to get out of their circumstance into the hospitality industry. That's what I do to give back and try to help that next step to get them into feasible and living wages. Well, not all of hospitality is living wages, but I pay a living wage. So what else can we do to help that?
Well, here's what I would say. One is I think we should stop using the term giving back. Unless you took something, I don't think you should use the word giving back. I think when you're pulling people forward, this is my own little pet peeve. You don't owe, listen, if in business, if you delivered value for somebody and they benefited from you, you don't owe anybody else except your customer for that. However, if you've been blessed and fortunate, I think you have a moral obligation to pull others forward. So that's my own little pet peeve on that. And listen, personally, I'd be glad to help you. But I do think that we've got to tell people to stop trying to save Black people. Just do business. Because nobody can help anybody if they're broke. And that is the situation we're in. Listen, if I had a nickel for every diversity conversation I've had, I'd be a billionaire. So
Another question, yes? I'm sorry.
What do you think also about a 606 initiative? Meaning that we really work to do business with local businesses, small businesses that are domiciled here in the city of Chicago, as opposed to contracts going outside of the city and outside of the state?
Well, listen, in my own little niche here, I think that you've got to do business in the modern parts of the economy that create wealth. I know people talk about jobs a lot. Jobs are actually not very aspirational. Entrepreneurship is aspirational, but there's businesses that will create lots of jobs, like security. Security creates lots of jobs. I mean, if you're doing security for people, landscaping creates lots of jobs. You can get lots of jobs, but no money. The modern parts of the economy that create wealth are the technical professional services, legal, tech, finance, those kind of things. Those are the areas of the economy that are creating wealth today. The world is different than it was in the 1950s. So I think we got to participate when blacks participate in the economy in proportion to their talent, we will fix this problem. But I think one of the things we have to do is stop the silliness of asking white people to save black people. So therefore, like all the programs have to do with blacks being subs to whites. That is silly. You will never create any capacity that way. So do business with people that are ready to deliver value. There's no lack of talent in the black community. And when you do business with people that are ready today to deliver value, they'll take care of their own communities, because that's just how the world works. If you look at our history, you look at the Eastern Europeans that came here in the beginning of the early 20th century. How did they go from absolute poverty to prosperity? Their first generation were essentially peddlers and small entrepreneurs. Their kids got more educated. They started participating in the modern parts of the economy, and then they became more wealthy than the general population. It's happened, most people don't know, Indians from India make 73% more than whites on average in this country. Why is that? Because they tend to participate in the modern parts of the economy. So I don't know if I answered your question, but I do think doing business in the modern parts of the economy is the most impactful thing you can do. That creates a social capital that will fund smaller, I would call it neighborhood businesses and things like that. So I don't know if I asked you your question, but.
Yeah, actually, it's somewhat of a two-part question, which I think you've sort of addressed, but it's somewhat ironic that you're here from Wichita, which is the most classic example of, whites destroying the Black Wall Street, right? One of the most infamous events in history occurred in Wichita, but yet you've obviously come through this. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and what you?
Are you talking about Wichita or Tulsa?
Well, Tulsa.
Okay.
Yeah, Tulsa.
Yeah.
But the concern, or the question is, tell us a little bit about yourself and why do you think you rose up from that time to be as successful as you are?
Well, it was 99% luck. I was actually born in Philadelphia. That's where my father's from. My parents went to Wichita State, so that's where I grew up. My mother was 20 and my father was 23, so they had no dough. Luckily for me, I was the oldest, and my parents just gave me a set of rules. They said, if you do these things, go do whatever you want. So I had my first business when I was 5. My parents didn't have any money to give me. I mean, obviously we ate, we had this little apartment, I had my family there with me, but my parents had no money. So therefore, at 5 years old, I started my first business. And then at 8 years old, I started a different business because they didn't have anything to give me. I think that was a blessing for me, that I was born to parents with great character that essentially gave me a set of rules and said, good luck. So now when I moved to Chicago, I grew up in the 60s and my heroes were like, this is Muhammad Ali, who actually went to school with my mother, that part of that generation, I would say. So, but I'd always been, I would say, kind of a little math nerd. In fact, when I was 12 years old, I was a terrible student, and my parents were they were certain that I wasn't without hope. So they went and got me tested, and I came up with this math answer that was better than the answer they had in the test. So in one is, I would say I just was lucky. I was lucky to be born to two great parents who, and my father told me this. So back in the early 60s, I was there, a lot of racial animosity. In fact, when we moved to Chicago, we were the first Black family in a white neighborhood, and I had a bomb thrown in my house, and they could go home right on our lawn. That was kind of traumatic for a 12-year-old, but my father said, suck it up, we're not going anywhere. Well, luckily for me, my father, even though we lived in kind of an all-Black world, my father took me around to meet other people. He wouldn't put up with like anti-Semitic stuff. He'd make sure we went out and met Jewish people, and he gave me the history of all those things. So I would say I've always been, and my parents were very, very pro-Black, but not anti anybody else. So again, I just think that God's blessed me. I don't know why. I think he must like low IQ math nerds. But that's, hopefully I answered your question. I know you. Yes, there you go.
What about business now? I mean, it seems like something here with Rotary, other associations, EKI-Digital, it's an unknown, right? Does that play into this in some way, shape, or form? Is there anything we can do for grassroots?
Well, listen, there's lots and lots of, over the years, if you remember the whole George Floyd incident, right? Everybody felt really bad, and everybody made these multi-trillion-dollar commitments. You got big banks and said, we're going to spend $100 billion for racial equity. So the question is, are things better than they were in 2020? Are they worse? They're worse. So what I would say is, there's a difference of what I think in the business community in the early 20th century versus today. When Julius Rosenwald didn't have a marketing department, he didn't have a diversity, equity, and inclusion program. He was just a virtuous man that said, our country has to live up to its principles. And he did something. He didn't even want to credit himself, by the way. Booker T. Washington did that on his behalf. So I would say we're in this together, and we all need to protect this system that we have. Otherwise, now my grandfather was from Cuba. Now I have family from Venezuela. If you've never been to one of those places, first of all, you can't go to Venezuela now, it's so dangerous. But you ought to see what it's really like, what can happen to a country if you let socialism take root in that country. It's really bad, and unfortunately, most young people believe in socialism. It's sexy. Take from wealthy people, distribute the money, and everything will be good. So I think we're in this thing together, and we ought to advocate for participation in this system that has created so much opportunity for so many people in our country and around the world. All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Ron. Very much. Now, we don't pay our speakers for speaking, but we do part with a little thank you mug. So I want to give this to you.
Thank you very
Hopefully
much.
you look at every day, and
I
then
will.
we will get your membership application maybe next week. That being said, we have another speaker, and I know we're going over by quite a bit, but we've got a beautiful program here, so bear with me. Taras, you want to join me up here, introduce yourself, and give us an update on Ukraine. Thank you for being here.
Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Taras Ganchak. I arrived from Ukraine. I've been here for about 3 weeks. I'm the member of Ivano-Frankivsk Rotary Club. I'm in charge of international cooperation. So right now I'm in Chicago. I try to explore opportunities with Rotary clubs around Chicago and share our experience, get some experience from projects your club's doing, and eventually maybe we can do some good things together. So the first slide, you can see that in Ukraine we have 62 Rotary clubs and 6 satellite clubs. In total, we have 1,100 members. Our city is, small one. We have only 250,000 inhabitants, and our club numbers 32 members and around 150 associates. This means the people who are not the members but actually help us to implement our ideas, our projects, and assist us with our missions. Next slide, please. Okay, currently I would like to speak on 3 ongoing projects. We started them in 2022 and we continue them in 2023. Well, you know that last February we had to change our focus and start projects related to areas we never dealt with. I'm talking about moving from normal medical, social, and cultural projects to projects which actually were important for people in different areas, especially in central and eastern part of Ukraine. And here I'm talking about the first project, module houses in Moshchun. Moshchun, this is a little village in the outskirts of Kyiv, the capital of Ukraine, which was almost completely destroyed. About 85% of buildings were destroyed. And a lot of people had no place to live in, especially before the winter. So our mission was to build and provide this community with 300 module homes, temporary places to live in. Can we go to the second slide, please? Yeah, so this initiative was a joint initiative of our club together with Kyiv Club, so a Rotary Club of Kyiv, the capital of Ukraine. And the ambitious goal is to build 300 module homes. Right now, we are about to finish the first 100, and in 2023, we're gonna complete these projects. So these houses are equipped with all necessary things. People have all amenities. And recently, we added one more thing like mobile generators because of the latest events. So now they have electricity in their homes as well. So how it works, normally the families who have their homes destroyed, they move to temporary homes, and once we rebuild their permanent homes, they can move back, and these temporary homes can then go to the next parts of Ukraine where cities were destroyed and people have no place to live in. Well, the price of one module home is about $12.5K. Also, it is worth being mentioned that this project is being implemented in cooperation with our colleagues from New Zealand and also some Rotary clubs from Japan. Can I go to the next slide, please? Yeah, a couple of photos here. You can see a plaque on one of such homes. It is saying that this home was built and financed in cooperation with a club from Japan. Yeah, let's go to the next slide, please. Well, one more initiative we started last year was equipping public transport drivers with first aid kits. Actually, maybe it is seems to be not very like big initiative, but frankly speaking, in big cities like Kherson, Mykolaiv, Nikopol, it is not very safe for people to use public transportation, and sometimes when the cities are being shelled, it is needed to provide first aid to commuters, and in this case, drivers are trained and provided with necessary kits to do first aid. This initiative was implemented together with Rotary Club from Niagara, Canada. So what they did, they made those 500 kits on their own. They transported them to our city, and then we distributed them among those 4 cities I've just mentioned. Can I move to the next slide, please? Oh yeah, here are a couple of photos, how it was, how they prepared these kits with Rotary logo, and then in the depot, transportation depot in Ukraine. So our team is helping to get them to our office, and then distribution of these kits. Well, let's go to the next one. Well, next to our city, we have a small town, the city of Halych, and there we started the project of musculoskeletal rehabilitation center. Well, the hospital provided us with premises, and our goal was to search for financing for necessary equipment, and also consultants with experts how to provide this kind of assistance to needy people. So also we are going to work on this project in 2023. And the next slide, please. Yeah, this is our roadmap for this year, 2023. As I mentioned, we keep going with module houses for the village of Moshchun. Then we go with rehab center, and also we do some small initiatives like monitoring the needs of frontline cities in terms of firefighting trucks, ambulances, demining drones and generators, and then provide them with these resources. Well, if we have a capability to buy and then to transfer to local communities. Well, I believe this brings me to the end of my presentation today. I really didn't want to take a lot of your time, knowing this is almost the end of your lunch. So on the slide, you can see the context of our president, Taras Herheduk, name like mine. And so Taras Hanchag, it's me. I'm in charge of international cooperation. So we have email, so we can contact and keep communicating. And we have our Facebook page. You can also go and see all our initiatives which were in the past and which are currently being implemented. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much. We can only give a 1 mug per day. You got ahead. Well, thanks, guys. Ed, where are you? There he is. Ed, you got about 35 seconds to talk about the Membership Accelerator and the Rotary Membership League programs.
Okay, so I'll try to do it in 34 seconds. We've talked about the Rotary Membership League. It's a pretty even battle right now with teams. We are going to have a pep rally in the next couple of weeks, so expect that, and continue to bring people to not only this meeting, but when we have our birthday party in February was brought up, that's a great opportunity to bury the other teams and get a lot of new Rotarians. The other piece is the Rotary Accelerator Program. It's a concept that we created to bring people who are potentially younger, aren't as familiar with Rotary, may not have the means to join Rotary at this point, to have a 2-year opportunity to become Rotary members. There's a small fee for them to participate, but we're going to be announcing that very soon. So we'll be looking in the gyrator, look for emails, have conversations with myself, Tamara, anyone on the board, and it's just great ways to extend what we have here to the bigger community of Chicago. 34 seconds.
37. Thanks. All right. In good old tradition, let's conclude this meeting. Stand up and join me in the four-way test, please. It's the four-way test of the things we think, say, or do. First. Second. Third. Fourth. Fifth, let's have fun. Thank you. Meeting concluded.